Welcome to the shop. Beautiful day here. Looks like a wonderful afternoon for a ride. However, I have myself booked a special project today. I took my 17-year-old Cyfac apart. I'm going to recondition all the parts, clean them up, polish them up, check them out, replace the ones that need replaced. For instance, that headset, it's the original headset. It's made by Strong Light. It's a French company, but it's a curious headset design. Look at this bearing. How often do you see an angled roller bearing in your headset? There's two of those, one in each cup. This is a 1-inch fork, which you don't see that anymore. That's the original fork. I'm going to talk about some of the artistic work that Cyfac puts into making their frames then and now. This is not a one of a kind, but there are not too many of these rolling around out there. Cyfac never did make many frames, maybe 1,000 a year. Made a bunch of frames for pro tour riders, famous guys, and they just paint over it and put the team's colors and team logo on the bike frame. But small manufacturer. It's in near Lyon, France, in Burgundy region. Anyway, that headset was a problem, and it led to another problem which I have to resolve. For some reason they put a FSA top cap in there. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. I'm going to replace it. Look at this tiny little expansion plug. Jesus. And that was causing my problem, basically. And the bearings are fucked. So I bought this 3-inch Neko, and that's going to provide a lot more support. Bottom, new headset bearings, cartridge bearings. And it's an alternate top cap that the seller sent me. It's a carbon piece. Original bar, original stem. That's a big bar. It's 42 centimeter wide, but it's got a 130 reach and a 130 drop. And that stem, that's a 125. ITM Millennium, they call it the Super Over. You can go either way. You get a little rise. That's how I was using it, because I was old and out of shape then. I'm old but in shape now. So I need a little bit extra rise. I wasn't very flexible. So I had that on the fork steerer, and I had 30 millimeter spacers, and I had this on top of the stem. That's the old Cyfac seat post clamp. All of this stuff is original. Spec can't be coarse at the time. I wish I'd have gotten the record, but it's done me well. Don't complain. It's a triple. Bought this when I lived in Aspen. The town level is 7,800 feet, and my rides went from there up to about 10,000 or 12,000, depending on which way out of town I rode. And I've always had speed plate pedals on this. This is the original bottom bracket. I took it out, took it to the local shop. I wanted to see if the bearings were okay. Bearings are okay. I mean, the lithium grease inside there is pure white still. It spins perfect. That's left side, non-drive side. Drive side. There's a little circlip that holds the bearing in place over here. Old style. Calipers have a little bit of a problem. That stud right there has a little spring holder, somewhat like that, I guess, and it broke, so that spring wants to come loose and then your brakes don't work. So I've got to figure out a fix for that. A year, almost 2 years ago now, no, a year ago now, I ordered that piece from a campy shop in Bangkok, from the campy in Italy. It still hasn't arrived, so that's a comment on supply line, isn't it? But that's an old part. There might be something on the web I can find that, but I'm going to see if I can't invent a fix that'll work. We'll see. Anyway, taking it all apart gave me an opportunity to weigh all the parts, which I did that, and I took photos. I haven't mapped it out on a spreadsheet yet, see. But I did an estimated weight on the bike anyway, and I'm sure it's pretty accurate. This SQ Lab seat, I like those seats. That's the original post. It's an ITM Millennium. It matches the handlebar and stem. That's not an unusual design, is it? You can adjust the angle of the seat incrementally by these two screws, which is a feature I like. And I, realizing that those bars were way too long, as was the stem, I replaced it about a year ago with these Cyfac Nerv R1 carbon bars and a 100 stem. Campy course shifters still work. I don't know if you're familiar with campy. Most people use Shimano, but they have this little thumb lever. This lever does not swing like the Shimano. You've only got this, which shifts to a lower gear, and then this one for shifting down. So that's kind of a funny setup when you're riding. You have to do this. It's a little bit harder on this side because you're using this one more anyway, aren't you? Anyway, I got used to it. I had old Cadre on the bike before this, and when I bought this bike, I wanted everything to be European, so I put campy on it. And I used to have campy on an older bike way back when, before most of y'all were born. So I kind of went back to that, and that's just what campy does. Now they have a different design for this. They still use this thumb lever, but instead of the lever coming straight out, it dips down and then out. So it's down here a little bit lower where your thumb naturally is. And when you're in the drops, that's when this is kind of most troublesome. You can still use it, you just get used to it, but when you're up here, it's not a problem. Down here, shifting a gear here, it's not ideal. So they actually dropped it down a little bit so your thumb is down here when you're on the drops, and it's a little bit further. So it's an altogether better design, but it's still Campanola. Campanola does stuff like that. You get used to one thing or another. This was not the top of the line frame that Cyfac was making, and they would make it custom design, tubes and everything to fit you. I didn't do that, but that's 56 frame, alloy lugs, carbon fiber tubes, carbon fiber, alloy here, alloy here. It's not the lightest frame in the world. That frame is about 1,500 grams. And there was, this was 2004, there were some problems with people mating carbon tubes to alloy or steel lugs. But Cyfac apparently had it figured out, because I've never had a lick of problem with this. And they're still doing the same thing on their frames. They're making carbon tubes now to titanium. Titanium in here, the carbon in here, and here. It'll be a titanium section, not the whole tube. It's carbon, a head tube, back to about here, and then titanium, and then carbon here, and then titanium, carbon, titanium, carbon. It's kind of interesting design. It's a beautiful bike. I imagine it rides superb. But the design of this bike is just lovely. I'm going to get into that more, but this is the project. I've taken reasonable care of it over the years, but it's 17 years old. Shit happens. That's from the derailleur clamp. There's little nicks here and there. Not a whole lot, but there are there. There's one there. There's a little tiny mark there. There's a couple underneath the down tube in here somewhere. Obviously, you're not going to see those. There it is. Well, that's it. There's a little mark there. And it's mainly this where the front derailleur clamp is going to be covered up on it. And the paint here chipped, but the seat post clamp is there. That's a blemish on that. Cyfac. It's a made up word. C for cycles, F for fabrique, French for made, artisanal. I forget what that C stands for anyway. Artisanal handmade frames, basically, is what it's supposed to imply. I bought it from a company. I don't think they're even in business anymore, Velo Europa. It was the American distributorship, the only one in America for Cyfac. And they had a working arrangement with John Howard. Now, John is a legendary American cyclist, 3-time U.S. Olympic cyclist, the original Hawaiian Ironman champion. So many awards and stuff like that with John, you can't mention it. But one of the notable things about John, he set the world land speed record riding a bike on the Bonneville Salt Flats behind a specially equipped vehicle with a fairing. He did 152.2 miles per hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats. Now, if that doesn't take balls, I don't know what does. Anyway, I'm going to get this all cleaned up, buffed out, waxed and polished. Same thing with all of these parts. There's obviously a lot of wear and tear marks on these cranks, but it's not too bad considering it's 17. I think a lot of this little stuff might come out. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to take these apart, clean them, and put them back together. Rear derailleur is in fine shape. Front derailleur cage shows a little blemishes. It's obviously not stainless steel, is it? But it's not bad. And it works. That works fine. The bike's not the lightest thing in the world. It's not too heavy, but damn, it rides nice. This is an example of the art I was talking about. Hand work. Now this, first of all, that tube, you can see it's a little bit concave from edge to edge. Obviously wider on the top, and it has kind of a thin blade trailing edge. But each one of these swooshes is a painted design that fills a depression. If you rub your hand down here, you'll find a depression that starts there and it runs here. And this kind of, so there's like a little bit of a raised edge up to there. It's cut out here. And that just kind of defines that. Again here and again here. I think the logo looks damn nice. It's a beautiful design. And Cyfac did the same thing. They've got 3 of these depressions in the molding. And again, this is kind of a concavity here that runs so that the edges kind of roll out a little bit higher. And this concave through there starts here and it runs all the way down until you get near about here, and now it's just round down to the lug. Same thing on this side. Same thing with the chain stays. Again, those depressions with the swoosh highlight, the concavity run there, thinner lower edge, fatter upper edge. It's a little bit not near like it is today, where you might have a chainstay that comes down that far, flat, narrow. And this is a signature of Cyfac. They always have these double joinery there. They still do that on their current frames. And then they call this model the Nerv Carbon. Now I'm filming this exactly wrong. Nerv Carbon, because apparently this tube here and here somehow in the imagination resembles a nerve. Anyway, it's again concave from one end of the tube to the other. It's narrow on top and it's broader and flatter on the bottom. It's almost completely flat, a little bit rounded on the bottom. Same thing here. Again, these depressions, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, both sides. This is a big fat, but look at the design of this again. Concave. So I don't know what the idea is with that. I mean, the whole notion of aerodynamic design was probably just sinking in 2004. I don't know, I'm not a historian, but it's a beautiful bike. It's artwork, basically. There's a little bit more design touch there. And down here, they have a little Cyfac logo, sort of a raised bump, and then it just says Nerv Raccord Aluminium. Okay. 2 bottle cage mounting points. Also, you can kind of look at this frame and gauge its era by the design here. Got brazed on cable housing stop here, 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 another one back here. So that in and of itself speaks to a certain era, doesn't it? BSA bottom bracket, British thread, can't be bottom bracket, British threads here. That's curious to me. I would have almost guessed Italian threads, but no, it says it right on the bottom bracket. 1.37 by 24. So in case you didn't know, that's the right side. And that's handy that they also mark that left side. Like, you wouldn't know that's the left since that's marked right, but yeah. That's what holds the crank arms on. So that's my project. I got to get to it. And then later on, let's go for a ride.